Start playing the music because the music is awesome. Greetings and welcome to the Talk with History podcast. I am your host, Scott, here with my wife and historian, Jen.
Hello.
On this podcast, we talk about history's continuing impact on us and our personal journey through YouTube as we continue to explore, record, and share our history walks with you. Now, before we get into our main topic, I want to ask for some 5-star reviews. Last week, we had a great review that I got to read from Not Sleepy Girl. Apple Podcast reviews help the show grow. If you don't have an Apple device, you can ask us questions over on Twitter at Talk with History or reach out to us through our website at talkwithhistory.com. And don't forget to check out our other podcast, The History Buzz, where we interview folks while chatting about history over a couple of drinks, and we let the conversation wander where it may. Last week, we talked about the history of Colonial Williamsburg and the town's path from being one of the birthplaces of our nation to today's tourist draw. But if you've never visited there, it can be a bit intimidating to know where to go and what all there is to do. So today, we are going to teach you what we have learned in over a dozen different trips to this historic playground. So Jen, give me the inside scoop on what people need to do at Williamsburg.
So there are things that we learned as first-timers that I wouldn't do again. And so I just wanted to give recommendations to people, especially if you're on your way to Colonial Williamsburg right now. Where should I go? Where should I park? GPS is going to take you to the visitor center.
Yep, which is where we start off with our video.
Yep.
I'll put the video in the description.
And the visitor center is great. I would say it's great for two things. One, the gift shop.
Yep.
They have the biggest and best gift shops there. Two, the amount of ticket people available to you.
Yeah.
So they have about 8, which is great because the ticket place in actual Colonial Williamsburg
in the main drag
is like 2 people that work at a snail's pace.
It takes
forever. So if you're looking to get something that sells out quickly, like carriage rides, I would recommend you go to the visitor center and get your carriage ride.
Yeah, don't get me started on the carriage rides.
I know. But it is not the place to be to get to Colonial Williamsburg, to be in the heart of everything.
Because it's a hike.
It's a walk. Yeah. And they have shuttle buses if you want to ride a shuttle bus. And you can park there. And I would say they have a lot of parking there. So if you had a bigger vehicle or an RV, it might be the better place to park. However, we found the better place to park that also has a lot of parking.
It's free.
And it's open is at the Rockefeller Folk Art Museum.
Yeah.
So as I talked about in the previous podcast, the Rockefellers were the philanthropists that funded the resurgence of Colonial Williamsburg. Yeah. And part of it is a folk art museum that's named for John D. Rockefeller Jr.'s wife, Abby Rockefeller.
That's right.
So Abby Rockefeller Folk Art Museum is what you want to put in your GPS.
Yeah.
And that's where you want to park. It's free. You don't have to pay for it. A little bit closer to Colonial Williamsburg, I'd say a block closer, you will pay. But to walk 1 block, park it.
You basically park in this parking lot. You walk by this museum on the way, and then you're a block down,
and you're
right there.
You're right on Duke of Gloucester.
Now, the one thing I will say, on a separate video, we showed this kind of like our behind the scenes video, was there was that cool walkway.
Yeah. So the one cool thing about walking from the visitor center to Colonial Williamsburg, they break up that long walk with kind of walking you back through time.
Yeah, that was actually kind of neat. So there's this bridge, there's this walkway / bridge, and there's markers, there's like plaques in the ground, and it says, hey, okay, it's 1990, this was on TV. Yeah. It's 1960, and then all of a sudden it starts
your color television.
Right, it just starts jumping back in time.
It's 1920. Women just lost the right to vote.
Yeah,
it's like as you walk back, what are you losing?
Yeah, one of the cool ones that stuck out in my mind was like sometime in the 1800s, you can, most people can't travel more than so many miles per day over land.
Stagecoach, yeah.
Right, stagecoach.
So it's giving you, as you're losing your modernization, trying to take you to back in time.
Yeah,
To when you walk
that piece was pretty neat. If you don't really care about that,
you could probably
go watch our video and park over by the Rocket Trail.
It would be. It's a good workout regardless to walk Colonial Williamsburg. You can rent scooters if you have people who need the added.
Like the little wheelchair scooters.
Yes, you could probably rent those in town. I have seen advertisements for those. But it is a walking place. Yeah. It is. The Duke of Gloucester is a long street. At one end of it is the Capitol building. At the other end of it is the College of William and Mary. Yep. And then from that spans off the Palace Green, which has the Governor's Palace. Yep. Right across from that green is the ticket office. So that's where the carriage rides will also start as well. So you'll see people gathering over there and you'll see carriages over there. Yeah. Now, tickets. You're probably like, what do I need tickets for? If you want to go into any place and engage with the people, you need a ticket. And usually they're marked, if they're open, with a colonial flag. So the colonial flags will be in front of buildings because not every building is open every day. Yeah. On the weekends, I would say most of them are. But in
the prime, in summertime, in the prime times.
But if you like, the Wythe House isn't always open. Right. There's certain things that's not always open. But when you see the flag in front, it's open. But you will need a ticket to go inside.
Yeah, and so going inside, right? And why do you want to buy a ticket to go inside? Well, they actually give you a tour, right? They're actually walking you through,
and you can ask tons of questions.
And you can ask tons of questions. Sometimes they have. Who was the guy that we ran into in one of our more recent visits? He was going to play George Washington, but he was playing someone else?
So we went into a tavern.
Yeah.
And he was going to play George Washington. He played the tavern owner.
Yeah. But he was one of kind of the tour guides / tavern owner.
Exactly.
Right? And in order to get the tour through that particular tavern and learn about the kind of cool historical things, you'd have to have a ticket. Exactly. Or you buy a season pass like we did.
So it's just a day ticket. You don't need specific tickets to go into these specific buildings. You need a day ticket.
All right, I stand corrected there. Yeah.
Or you can buy a week ticket, or you can buy season passes like us. Okay. But what it does is it gets you into those buildings that are part of the normal daily tour buildings.
Yeah.
Now, there's special tickets. Carriage rides is special on top of that. The haunted Williamsburg tours are special on top of that. They will always specify if this is an added cost or an added ticket.
Okay.
So, but to get into the regular tours, the regular buildings with the flags in front, that you're going to need a ticket for that. Now, there are things to do without tickets, and we show that. So there's a maze behind the palace
it's like a little garden maze.
It's awesome. Hedges.
Yeah. It's nothing crazy, but it's big enough for kids to run around and have a good time.
And they love it. And you wouldn't know it was there unless somebody told you. Yeah. And I remember we had walked back there and someone said, "Are you going to the maze?" And we're like, "What?" Like, maze. So my kids got all excited and we ran back there to the maze. And then any gift shop along Duke of Gloucester or it's free to go inside the gift shops. Of course, they want to take your money, so it's free to go in those. But again, if you want to go in and talk to the apothecary, or you want to talk to the wig maker, or you want to go inside the palace, that's the tour ticket. But another cool thing to see that's free is the gaol or the jail.
Oh yes,
and that's where they held the pirates. Fun. Blackbeard's Pirates.
Yeah, we have a separate video. A separate video on that. So that one was neat because I didn't realize, like, you hear about Blackbeard and you think Blackbeard, you kind of think the Caribbean and you think all that stuff, but like he got caught
in North Carolina.
Not far from Williamsburg. Yes. Right? And so if I remember correctly, he was killed when they were trying to take him.
Yeah, but they captured
like 15 of his crew
and brought him back to
Williamsburg. They brought him back to Williamsburg, right? They we were standing in the jail cells where Blackbeard's crew, right? There's like chains on the walls, think of Pirates of the Caribbean, they did the Disney ride, although a lot less glamorous. And
so that's free.
That's neat. Yeah.
So there's certain things that you can do that don't cost anything, and you can walk around and just talk to people and engage with people, and they'll have sometimes demonstrations, or again, historical characters can be walking around that you.
Do you have to, like, when we went and saw Martha Washington kind of do her one-man act, right? Because sometimes they have those historic characters, or they have multiple ones. Yes. Like there's that kind of theater sitting area. Do you have to have a ticket for that?
That you do have to have a ticket for.
Okay.
So there was someone standing there who kind of looked at our passes as we walked in.
They were checking. That
was amazing, though.
I was super impressed and just flat-footed surprised.
So those are the other events. When you get to Colonial Williamsburg, or you check on your phone, they'll have a list of events for the day or week or month. And if they have any character talks, I recommend going.
Yeah.
So usually they'll have Thomas Jefferson, usually they'll have Martha Washington, and usually they'll have George Washington. Those are the ones they usually have the most of, because those people were so pinnacle to Colonial Williamsburg.
Right.
And we went to Martha Washington, and she was fantastic. So not only
I was so impressed with her.
They dress, they stay in character. She talked about what it was like being the first lady.
Yeah, and so the time period for when she was acting was a year into George Washington's presidency, or 2 years or something like that.
Yes, I think it was 2 years into his
first term.
And how they didn't know what to do with a first lady.
Right.
And they didn't really have any.
And they were in New York.
They were in New York, and they didn't have any protocol for her, and they didn't have any budget for her to furnish the president's mansion, and because it wasn't the White House then, and so basically what she had to just kind of make do with and figure out. And then they did expect a lot of her. They expected her to host all these dinners, and they expected her to host all these teas.
She said I think she said the first dinner they were hosting was 3 days after they got to New York or something like that. So she had to set all this stuff up. You know, so the acting was fantastic.
It was phenomenal.
I was so surprised.
And then she took questions. So she's ready to answer questions, which means, she has that knowledge. She has that historic.
And again, she tried to answer any kid questions.
All the kids. Any kids.
She was ready for all the Hamilton questions, right? There was tons of Hamilton questions, but she was great. She answered them in stride. I was so surprised at how good she was. Seeing her, I would actually go see more characters if I was there again.
Yeah, and I hear they have ones with Thomas Jefferson just contemplating what to write in the Declaration of Independence, and George Washington is contemplating how to be the president of a country, not knowing what just the first one to do it all. So you're setting all this precedent.
Sure.
So it's a bunch of that kind of thought process and pondering and stuff. So definitely I would recommend those. They do plays from time to time. I saw a play there.
Okay.
And that also requires a ticket, but it's not above and beyond your cost. Yeah. And you can see them act out a play that would be from the time. And that was really fun as well.
Yeah. Now some other tips, I'll talk about real quick as far as eating there.
Yeah, so we did the tavern. We did King's Arm Tavern.
And that was just that. King's Arm is definitely more of an adult.
You need to probably make reservations for that, and it's going to be expensive.
Yeah, it was cool,
but it's historic. They will serve you the food that they ate at the time.
They'll tell you all about whatever you're eating.
They will. And they'll give you a lesson in your napkin.
Yep. They put the napkin on me.
How long it is and why it's this long. And then kind of stuff that you're drinking and what would they drink. And some of the little appetizers, like the relishes and stuff. Things that would basically be preserved for long periods of time. Yeah. But I would recommend a tavern. Again, reservations, and expect to spend some money.
Yeah. I mean, if you're bringing your kids... you actually can eat in the museum.
So that's a good tip.
That's not a lot of people know about.
Yeah, around lunchtime, it's going to get crowded, especially down at the end of Duke of Gloucester, or opposite of the Capitol, close to William and Mary, is where you're going to have all the food shops.
And it gets packed.
It gets packed. So you have the mellow mushroom pizza, and you're going to have things like quick little eatery kind of things, and it's packed, 2-hour wait. But the museum has a food court. Yeah. So if you just go back to where you parked by the museum, and you don't have to pay to go in the museum if you go into the food court.
Is it downstairs? Or you go in and it's right up front.
It's right up front. And you just say, I'm going to go eat at the food court. They let you right in. Yeah. Now, usually with your ticket, you can get into the museum for free anyway.
And it's a great museum.
Yeah. And if you have kids with you, they give you kind of a scavenger hunt. So it's fun for kids to do as well. So another tip if you have little ones with you. But you can eat there. They have salads there. They have sandwiches there. They have drinks there.
We've done that once or twice.
And it's just easy, hardly any line. And it's a great view.
It's a smidge cheaper.
And it's a smidge cheaper, yeah. So that's a great tip if you're looking for a place to eat.
Yeah.
There's also, haunted tours.
Oh, yes.
So you could pay, and I think they do these pretty much every night because they're so fun, but they do it by lantern.
Yeah.
And they take you from house to house. And
they also have like, so again, I'll paint the picture of Colonial Williamsburg for those who haven't been there, right? There's the main drag. And it's some cobblestone and this, that, and the other.
Yes, Gloucester is the big street.
That's the big street, and then kind of what tees off of it is what goes down towards the Palace Green. And then you've got all these little things that you can do off of each kind of side street and this, that, and the other. So the Palace Green is like this really, it's a gorgeous kind of, it's what it sounds like. It's like a big green. It's like a big lawn, almost like I would almost call it a field, except that it's between a bunch of buildings. And so the kids love running around there.
Love it.
But at nighttime, when we do these, you and I went to go do a ghost tour. So all around kind of where the Palace Green is, there's like these like torch kind of little lantern things, and they actually light them, and they're lit, and it's like it's real flame. It's just kind of sitting out there, and so you have all these cool. It gives it's such a colonial feel.
Colonial
It's
vibe.
it was so neat, and I'll be perfectly honest, I was a little bored during the ghost tour because it's not really my cup of tea. But you love that stuff.
Well, I love the history behind it.
Yeah.
So we learned so much about George Wythe on that tour.
Yeah.
Because they got to give you the setting, right? They got to set the stage for you, so you learn all about the historical figure who lived in the house and what was the conflict and what's the story now. But I just love because you're getting a big part of history.
And it's funny, and I don't think I told you this, I don't think I realized until we went to do the George Wythe ghost tour that's the reason you like ghost tours so much. It's for the history.
Yes.
I never connected that. I was like, the reason you like ghost tours so much is because it's history, not because of the ghosts, but because of the history that comes with think about, and like, if you're listening, think about a ghost story. If you've ever been to London and done a Jack the Ripper tour or, things like that, think about how they set these ghost tours up.
Yes.
It's all history.
It's all history.
They're telling you about, here's what's going on. And now they kind of embellish a smidge and they kind of set the tone.
Sure. Absolutely.
But they're telling you the history, and then they're telling you about, like, the otherworldly experiences and the lights and, whatever. Yeah. So
those are absolutely fun. And then, of course, you'll pay extra if you want to do a carriage ride. And we did a carriage ride. So I know.
No, if you're going to I'm going to tell this part of the carriage ride story here, Jen. So for those listening, for the husbands, right? If your significant other wants to do a carriage ride, so if you can do it, I believe you can buy carriage ride tickets at the visitor center.
Yes.
So I would actually recommend that. Now, we ended up buying tickets at the, was it the Lumber House?
The Lumber House.
So which is kind of the other ticket spot. It's right on the main drag. It's pretty obvious. It's where all the carriage rides start. But you cannot get carriage ride tickets probably 30 minutes after they open.
Yes, they sell out fast.
I stood in line for an hour, and we still almost missed a spot.
I know.
There was the guy in front of me, or he was like 3 or 4 people in front of me. He was there for like 2 hours, just standing there, just to get a carriage ride, to be the first person to spend. I don't know what it was. We had a discount because we had our season passes. It was like $60 or something like that. But he was standing in line for 2 hours, and he was lucky to get one of the morning spots.
That's crazy.
So I had a feeling, because what they told us, now this is what the Williamsburg Inn told us, that as we checked in, they're like, oh yeah, they sell the tickets here at this Lumber House first for the carriage rides, and then they sell them at the visitor center. There's no way that's true.
No, because
as we were
there
buying,
weren't that many people
as we were buying tickets, they're like, oh yeah, these things are like, they're, that spot just went, that spot just went. I was like, what do you mean? You guys have been open for all of 15 minutes, and all the spots were almost gone.
Yes. So,
but it was pretty cool.
It was pretty cool. So I recommend, we had an open carriage. I recommend the open carriage because it's so much easier to look around and see the sights. I also recommend if someone's in colonial dress and part of Colonial Williamsburg, they'll engage with you on your carriage.
Yeah. As you're kind of carriaging by,
they'll
I don't know what
stop
that's called.
and they'll bow to you,
Yep.
which is a greeting, which is it is a colonial greeting of.
Because you were wearing your like fancy Colonial
I was wearing a
Williamsburg hat.
Yeah,
like a
so
little fancy hat.
I bowed too, like I gave a nod. So It's fun. That's fun to do.
Yeah.
You have the closed carriages, which are also cool. But I think if you really want to look around and see the scenery, there are carriages that are bigger. Ours was probably like a 4-person.
Yeah.
There are carriages that will be like 8 people or 10 people. So I know people will specifically ask for those.
Yeah.
So just be aware. If you want one of those, be there early. I recommend the visitor center.
Yeah, and you can't buy them in advance. You have
No.
to buy them day of. It's
Yes.
I'll be perfectly honest. That was kind of like one of my least favorite experiences of just buying the tickets. I was also hungry and cold, and I stood there for an hour. And
But it was our anniversary.
I was
and
like,
he
I
so
was
sweet.
ready to bite someone's head off by the time you came.
I
with
brought him coffee.
You brought coffee, and I was like, you asked me like how I was doing, and I just didn't say anything at all. I was not having it.
But so eating, that was one of the things when we stayed at the Colonial House,
The Lewis house.
the Lewis House, through the Colonial Williamsburg Inn. You can stay in colonial houses. Eating is something where do you do breakfast? Where do you do dinner?
Yep.
So you can always eat at the Colonial Williamsburg Inn. We had a great dinner there.
Did.
It was very nice, but it's kind of off the beaten path a little bit. It's not on the main drag.
It's a little pricier.
It's a little pricier. So if you want to go into town, and I say into town loosely, but this is closer to William and Mary, down Duke of Gloucester, there's some great little breakfast places there that you can eat. And there's, like I've said, the pizza places there. There's also a really great candy store we always go to there. And we get like gummies, and they have chocolate covered everything.
Yeah.
And of course, there was a Scottish store there.
Yeah.
And we love that store.
That's
so
great.
they have a bunch of different tartans in there. They have things that are made of wool and sweaters. So that's a very cool shop to go in as well.
Yeah, so I would say, right, if you're going to target, I'll give you breakfast, the person listening, I'll give you breakfast, lunch, and dinner recommendations for that little downtown spot because there's quite a few places to eat down there, but they're pretty separate, right? So if you're looking at breakfast, we actually went to what's called Aromas, Aromas, and it's kind of around the corner, right? But it's not far. You put it in your phone, you can find it, and it's not a short walk, but great breakfast spot. We ate there twice. It was really, really good. There's another place that was closer to the main drag, but it's more of like a bakery type place. Some pre-prepared stuff. Not like they're not going to make your pancakes right there. And then if you're doing lunch, so you mentioned the Mellow Mushroom, that pizza joint, again, not too far away. And there's actually other places to eat in that same little complex. They do like drinks and stuff like that over there too.
Wineries. That's kind of a big deal there.
So that was the other place that we ate on our anniversary night was the Fat Canary.
Fat Canary.
Now that's kind of one of the nicer places down there.
Nice place. Yeah.
It's a nice place. You're going to need reservations most likely. And they also have like a wine cellar type place downstairs. Really good food. I mean, and they had it all set up right for when we went there for our anniversary. And like, I got some major husband points when I got that set up. Fat Canary is great if you can make reservations in advance. I would not say that Fat Canary is for kids.
No.
But the Mellow Mushroom, Aromas, so there's some family spots there. And to be perfectly honest, like if you want to get slightly outside of just like the core Colonial Williamsburg, I mean, there's a whole city around you.
Yes, it's a modern city. So you have everything available to you there. As you're walking down the street, if you're curious about the houses, is it original building? Is it restored? Every house has a placard on it.
Yeah.
And so you'll be able to see the history of that house. Was it who lived there? What did they do? How long it was occupied, that kind of thing. So again, those are kind of things, if you're curious, they've done a really, really great job of giving that information to you. Yep. Pretty much every house, even off the main drag, every house that's in that 300-acre area has that little placard on it.
Yeah. And again, not only is there stuff for the adults to kind of look and see if they're interested, because kids, they're not going to go read the placards, right? But they will engage with the blacksmith, right? Or they will engage with what was the little
wood carver,
or the weapons area, right? I mean, we talked to one of our friends. Was it Greg? Who said he was like hanging out at the army for like an hour, and Greg's my age. It's not a kid. So there's lots of really fun stuff to do there. So Colonial Williamsburg, it really is history come to life. So you walk through the same streets that our founding forefathers walked, and it's almost surreal. And to be honest, it could be difficult to grasp in one trip. So give yourself some time if you end up making the trip out there. But if you ever do make it to this historical Disneyland, I think about everything that was done in those historic houses, the taverns, the late night dinners by candlelight, and yes, perhaps even business done during carriage rides by the Palace Green. Thank you again for listening to the Talk with History podcast, and please reach out to us at our website, talkwithhistory.com. But more importantly, if you know someone else that might enjoy this podcast, please share this with them, especially if you think today's topic, Colonial Williamsburg top tips, would interest a friend. Shoot them a text and tell them to look up the Talk with History podcast, because we rely on you, our community, to grow, and we appreciate you all every day. We'll talk to you next time.